Now, drum roll please. Introducing the new Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation Ambassador, Danny Pintauro.
Hi. I'm not sure what to do. I can't even bring myself to decide if I should tell him or not tell him, but you know I'm not good at not telling. I spend the whole time wondering if we're being safe and we're not even doing anything unsafe. I mean, he rented movies and brought wine and dessert last night. We sat by the fire and we talked and we fooled around a little bit, but I felt so uncomfortable. There were so many moments when I just wanted to stop because I was afraid. That's me in 2004 on AOL Instant Messenger, no less. And yes, rented movies, Netflix and chill hadn't been invented yet. I was talking to my best friend about how difficult it was bringing up being positive with someone I had feelings for. I was terrified and convinced that he would not want to see me again if I told him, and yet I was incapable of moving forward without telling him, especially sexually. And I was terrified that when I told him, he'd be angry with me for not telling him sooner and decide to call the Inquirer. Hashtag child celebrity problems. It was, for me, the most excruciating and emotionally exhausting part of being positive. Telling a boy. It was more exhausting than worrying about my health or my viral load. It was so exhausting that for years I decided to only date other guys who were HIV positive. It eliminated the fear and it gave us something to relate to. Unfortunately, sometimes it was the only thing we had to relate to. So I decided that was too exclusive, you know? It limited my options, and there's no good reason to limit your options, you know? Oh crud, there goes my space. I've lost my place. Hold on. I ended up breaking all my rules, right? And in the end, there was one thing that I realized early on, and that was if I had a glimmer of an emotional connection to a guy, I had to tell him right away. My anxiety increased tenfold if I had feelings for the guy, and I just had to figure out a way, like right now, call him, text him, find some way. It was the sanest option. Telling became less stressful than not telling. To think where my life would have ended up if I could have just been convinced that everything would be okay. Instead, time. Time heals all wounds and definitely helps with all that inner turmoil going on. So 8 years later, a first date was no longer terrifying, just mildly anxiety-provoking. The fear is way less, but there's a part of me that will always wonder in the back of my mind if he's gonna run. Cut to one such first date over sushi and beer in a crowded restaurant. It was going very well, and it was clear right away that we were gonna have a second date, and so I had to tell her. No hesitation about it. This is when my heart starts pounding and the latent fear creeps back in and my breath quickens as I try to figure out how to drop the bomb. But I had learned from experience that making a big deal out of it never worked. You know, placing this huge importance on this revelation was always, it made it seem scary and more foreboding than it is, and definitely made me look less than comfortable with my status, right? And with someone who's not very familiar with HIV, scaring them is not a good way to start off. So instead of dropping a bomb, I simply dropped it into the conversation. Yeah, moving to Vegas has been so crazy, and I've been working so much at this job, I haven't even had time to get anything set up, never mind make friends or meet anybody. I mean, all of my best friends are in LA. I had a great house, I had a great doctor. I mean, I don't even know if Las Vegas has an HIV-focused doctor. It'll all come with time. I mean, you know, I've been working so many hours at this job. That was it. My date later told me that up until that moment in his life, he had very little interaction with HIV. He was informed, of course, but he'd never had to face HIV head on. In that moment, he was obviously caught off guard, but he says that because I showed no fear, remorse, or shame, or anxiety about it, he was going to do the same. It just was, and it didn't change anything. You know, I mean, I did talk about, you know, having done drugs over the years as well, but I decided to sort of hold that big conversation about the meth problem for a later date. 8 years later, and I was comfortable talking about being positive, but not my drug problems. I'm clearly going to need to explore that in therapy. The date continued, and I allowed myself to open up emotionally, and we talked about everything: our dogs, our families, our jobs, our favorite restaurants, and my HIV. Later that night, we had our first kiss, and we decided to take it slow. Not because of my status, but because I'm old-fashioned. Or as old-fashioned as a gay guy, social, media-obsessed, crazy gamer living in Las Vegas can be. 1 year later, on the anniversary of our first date, he proposed. And 4 years later, my husband, Will, is still here, still with me, still negative. We're more in love than ever, and we hope to be beacons of light for the HIV positive guy who's worried he'll never find love. Where are you? And for the negative guy who's worried about dating someone who's positive. Why limit your options? It doesn't have to be so scary. Love's not scary.